Okay, I'll give us another couple of minutes on these. Okay, so have you got an answer for A? Okay, what did we get for A? That's great. A should be 7.2 centimeters. That's brilliant. Because X is the longest side, the hypotenuse. So you have to do 6 squared plus 4 squared and then square root it. We got an answer for B, 13.9. So the only thing for B, the longest side is 12 because it's opposite the 90. So if I want to get X, which is one of the shorter sides, I would need to take away. So I'm going to do 12 squared, take away 7 squared, as opposed to plus, which is 95. And then we need to square root 95. And that gives me 9.75. Okay, so we know that the 12 is the hypotenuse or the longest side because it is opposite the 90. Is that okay? Okay, right. So have we had a go at question two? The probability Kelly has toast in a third. What is the probability that she does not have toast? That's fine, no problem. So 1/3 means that 1 out of 3 times on average, she will have toast. So that means that 2 out of 3 times she won't have toast. Now, 2 out of 3, that is 2/3. So basically, if she's going to have toast 1/3 of the time, that means she doesn't have toast 2/3 of the time. Okay, and the rule there is that the total probability is always 1. So if we add up all of the possibilities, we get 1 whole, right? 2/3 and 1/3 make up a whole. Okay, we'll just do it as a picture. 2/3 plus 1/3 makes a whole. Is that okay? Brilliant. Now, the second one is a decimal, but it's the same idea. The probability that John scores a goal is zero point 0.2. What is the probability that he does not score a goal? So again, the probabilities need to add up to 1 whole. Zero point 0.2 is the chance he does score a goal. If I add the probability that he doesn't score a goal, I need to get an answer of 1 whole. So what would need to go in the box to make that work? Zero point 0.8, fantastic, right? So what we do is we take away from 1 to get the missing probability. So that's zero point 0.8. Right. So we are we okay now with the starter questions? So I was throwing us into it straight away, I know, but are we okay with those? Okay, fab. So what we'll look at now, we'll look at trigonometry. So you may have seen it before. It's always worth quite a few marks. So I thought we'd give it a go. But worst case scenario, even if we just do the tree diagrams, it's still useful. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a couple of questions on the sheet. So I gave you this sheet, okay? And we'll use A, B, and C as they're all pretty, yeah, they're all going to be pretty much the same. We'll use A, B, and C maybe as examples, okay? But before we even do that, if you get your whiteboards, we'll just do some examples of labeling triangles, okay? So just get your whiteboards and we'll just label some triangles. So on on your whiteboard, if we just draw two triangles. I'm going to draw an angle in. It doesn't have to be accurate. I'm just going to say this is, say, 30 degrees. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'll just call it X. That's angle X. That is the angle that we want to work out. Just going to draw a couple of triangles. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to label the triangles, and there's certain letters that we need. There's certain terminology that we need. Okay, so I'll just write what the words are first. We need to know the word hypotenuse, okay? Now, the really important letter here is just the first letter. We did this last time. Hypotenuse is always the longest side of a triangle, okay? So looking at these three triangles, the first one, to get the hypotenuse, I would just draw a line going away from the 90, and the side that I hit is the hypotenuse, so I label that H. Okay, so on your boards, label the hypotenuse for the other two triangles. So just have a go at that now, and then I'll do it. Okay, so for the one on the right, this is the hypotenuse, and the one on the bottom, this is the hypotenuse. So do we agree with that? Okay, all straightforward so far? Right, so hypotenuse, this is always opposite the 90. Right, we also have the opposite. Now, this is opposite the angle. So not the 90, it's opposite the angle that we want. So logically, if X is the angle that I want, to get the opposite, I draw a line, and then the side that I hit is the opposite. I'm going to label that O. Okay, so this would be the opposite on the second one. And on the third one, this would be the opposite. Are we okay with that? Okay, brilliant. Now, the other one is called the adjacent. I'll just keep using black for the time being. The adjacent. Now, adjacent just means right next to. So this is the only side that we haven't labeled. So on the first triangle, that's going to be this side. And I use an A for adjacent. Second one is this side. Third one, it is this side. And you can see in each case, it is right next to the angle that we want to find. Sometimes you're going to be given that angle, sometimes you're going to want to find it. Okay? Now, what we're going to do now, we're going to need our calculators shortly. So firstly, are we happy with how I've labeled those triangles? What I'll do, so what I'm going to actually draw a triangle, and I want you to label it on your board. Let's do this. I've got no idea if this is the right numbers. Let me just check. Okay, so can you draw that triangle on your board? Again, doesn't have to be accurate. Once you've drawn it, I want you to label the hypotenuse, the opposite, and the adjacent. Okay? So draw the triangle, doesn't have to be accurate. Label the hypotenuse opposite the adjacent. Put a thumbs up when you've done that, and we'll go over it. Okay, so if we labeled it, brilliant. Okay, so what was the hypotenuse? Yeah. Actually, no, the hypotenuse was the longest side. That's opposite the 90. So that is 15.6. No problem. What is the opposite? That's 10. Fantastic. Opposite the angle, it is either given to you or you have to find it. So opposite the angle, that is the opposite. And that means the adjacent must be 12. Okay. So are we happy with that? Brilliant. So what we're going to do now, so if you wipe off the board, we're going to do trigonometry. So this will be handy if you write this in your book, right? There's three, well, I say three formulas. There's like a little sort of a mnemonic to remember, okay? So in your book, if you just write down, you can write down trigonometry. I imagine you already have anyway. We know the layout of a triangle. So there's a 90. If this is the angle, you have opposite the angle, opposite the 90 is the hypotenuse, and the adjacent. That's the way we label a right angle triangle. Then next to it, and you may have heard this phrase, I want you to write exactly what I write. So SOH like that in that sort of triangle. CA, so CAH, and TOA, TOA. So just if you can copy that down, I'll explain what it means in a sec. Okay, so we copy that down. No problem if you need more time, that's absolutely fine. Okay, well, so what this means, the S here is for sine or sin, C is for cos, and the T is for tan. Okay, so this is all this is ways of working out a missing angle or a missing side. So I'm going to do an example. This is the sort of example you'd have. The example here is to find the angle X. So I've got a right angle triangle. There's the angle X. Let's say we have, right, so we've got this situation. Now, I'll just write this in red. What I do, I need to first label the triangle. Then I need to choose which of the three formulas I use. And then three, use shift for an angle. Okay, I'll explain exactly what all that means. So the first thing we're going to do, exactly what we did before, we're going to label this triangle. So can you tell me what the hypotenuse is for this triangle? 24, fantastic. So that's H. What is the opposite? 12, right? So that's O. And then the other one is the A, but it doesn't matter, it's not there. Right, so we've labeled it, I give that a tick. Now we need to choose which one of these, and they don't look like formulas, but they are formulas. Which one do I use? We need to tick off O and H as they come up. So we know O, so that's going to be ticked off. And we know H, so that's going to be ticked off. So which of the three formulas has, excuse me, which of the three formulas has two ticks? That's sin or sine. Okay, this one has two ticks. That is what we use. So I'll just write it in. Sine is what it was because because the opposite and hypotenuse comes up. Then three, if I want an angle, so in this case X, we need to use shift. So what I'm going to do is cover the S. Okay, I'm going to cover this up. So if I literally put my finger on the S, what is left over is O over H. So what I need to do is you press Shift, Sine or Sin, brackets. I'll show it on my calculator. And then you read it. We have O over H, which means divided by. So we need to now type in the opposite, O, divided by the hypotenuse H, which was 24. You write that in and you press equals. So if I do that, I have Shift, Sine, O over H. So you can use the fraction button or you can use divide, and I get 30. And it's degrees because it's an angle. Okay. So remember, for an angle, you have to press Shift first. Now, I imagine that was quite tricky because there's a lot of like moving parts there. Okay. Okay, so what we'll do another example, and then I'll give you a few to do on your boards. Okay? Nope. Okay, let's go. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just pop SOHCAHTOA back up here. Again, I'll say find X, but this time I'll use one of these ones. Let's change this one. Okay, so I want to find the angle X for this triangle. We do the same process. First thing is to label. So for this triangle, what is the hypotenuse? 10, fantastic. The opposite is this side on the left, which I don't know. What is the adjacent? That's 8, fantastic. So now let's look at our formulas. So in fact, I'll just write it again. Be easier actually because I've written on that. So ka toa. Right, we have the adjacent, so I tick that off. We have the hypotenuse. Which formula has 2 ticks? That's cos, fantastic. So that means I'm going to use cos. We want an angle, so that means I need to use shift to get cos minus 1. So on the calculator, I'm going to want cos minus 1 brackets, and the way you get that is with shift. If I look at the formula, if I cover up cos, I have A over H, which means adjacent divided by H. So the adjacent was 8. So in the brackets, I'm going to have 8 divided by the hypotenuse H, which was 10. And then we press equals. So can you have a go at that on your calculator and just say what you have? Right, that sounds really good. Shift cos 8 divided by 10. Again, you can use the fraction button as well. And fantastic, 36.87 or 36.9, roughly that. Right, is that okay? This is probably the hardest topic we've done so far. So let's do one more, and then I'll give you a couple to do. Okay, so let's do this one. Okay, so we want to work out the angle x for this right angle triangle. So for this one, the hypotenuse is here. It's not given to us. What is the opposite? Or how long is the opposite, I should say? 12, fantastic. What is the adjacent, or how long is the adjacent? That's 9, brilliant. Right, so that's the triangle labeled. We've done that. Let's write down SOHCAHTOA. SOS is O over H. Cos is adjacent over H. Tan is opposite over adjacent. Okay, so those are our formulas. We need to pick now which one we use, and it's going to be tan. Very well done, because we have the opposite and the adjacent. So that means that tan, we get 2 ticks, it's going to be that. So we've chosen. 3, we want an angle, not a side. So that means we need to use shift. So I'm going to do tan minus 1 bracket. If I cover up tan, you've got opposite over adjacent, which means divided by. So in the brackets, you would have 12 divided by 9, and then you press equals. So on your calculator, have a go at doing that, and we'll see if we get the same. 53.1. That's what I get as well. Or 53.13. Brilliant. I'll be happy with that. Okay, so not the easiest, to be honest, but I think you've done really well there. So I'm going to give you a couple of questions to do. So I think these ones are good ones to do. Okay, so I'll just give you two. Maybe that might be handy. Right, so I'm going to give you two questions to do. These are on the sheet. So we've got question 1. I'm going to give you question 1G and 1H. So have a go at these two. You need to label the triangles, pick which of the formulas you've got to use, and then find X. Have a go at doing that now. Put it onto my other screen. Okay, so just have a go at that now. Please let me know if you're not sure. Okay, so once you've had a go at them, just you can pop your answers into the chat or just put a thumbs up. That's fine. Okay, that looks really good, Amelia. So for the first one, we should end up with right tan minus 1, 2.5 over 2.8. Right, that is 41.8. Brilliant. And the second one, right, we have hypotenuse adjacent, cos minus 1, 11 divided by 15. Oh, my calculator disappeared. Sorry, just 1 second. There we go. And that's 42.8, so brilliant. Okay, great. So those would be the answers for those ones. Well done. Eleanor, does that make sense? William? Right, what we'll look at now is finding a missing side. Okay, so we looked at finding missing angles. Now we will find missing sides. So to find missing sides, we need to rearrange the formulas that I just told you about. But it's not difficult. The aim of the game is you cover what you want. That's always what we do with formula triangles. It's like if you've got speed, distance, and time, you cover up whichever of the three you want. So I'll just write that again. So Katoa. I will do an example. It's going to be find x. So let's label it. Okay, so what I want to do, actually, I'm going to change that ever so slightly, make that 18. There we go. So I want to find x in this question, but we can see that it's not an angle. It is one of the sides of the triangle. And we start it the same way. We still label. So the opposite is here. That's O. The hypotenuse is x, and we can see the adjacent is the 18. And we need to choose which formula we use. So this time, we need to tick off the hypotenuse and the adjacent. So I know we want the hypotenuse, but we still tick it off because it's something which the question is concerned with. So we tick off all the h's and we tick off the a's. So which formula am I going to use? It's going to be cos. Brilliant. It's cos. And because we want the side, we don't use shift. Okay, that's only if you want an angle. So what I'm going to do is cover what I want. Now I want x, which is the hypotenuse. So I'm going to cover up h. So I put my finger on h and then read what I have left. I can read adjacent over cos. Adjacent over cos. Now, over means divided by, so I literally write that in. I'm going to write x equals the adjacent, which is 18, over or divided by cos, and I need to then open and close a bracket because sine, cos, and tan cannot go on their own. It doesn't make sense. They need to have a number with them. Now, the number that goes with cos is the only other number I haven't used, and that is the angle, 60. Sine, cos, and tan always need an angle in the brackets. So here, that's going to be 60. And then I just type that in. So what I've written in red is the work-ins, and I just type it in. So 18. So notice I press the fraction button, which I think you both have. So I have 18 over cos 60, and that is 36. And obviously it's centimeters this time. And you could also divide. So I could have done 18 divided by cos 60, and that's exactly the same. How do you feel about that? I think that's quite tricky. It's not, I think it's one of the harder topics, but I just think it's worth a lot of marks. Okay, that's good to hear. Right, let's practice it. So we'll do another example, and then I'll give you a few on the whiteboards to do. So we'll do this one. Right, so this time, okay, so this one, we're going to find x this time. So if we label this triangle, what is the hypotenuse? Hypotenuse is 12, and the opposite is x, and then the adjacent is just there. Right, so we have the hypotenuse and but we have the hypotenuse and we want the opposite. Which formula am I going to use? Sine, brilliant. We cover what we want. So I want the opposite, so I cover it up. And then I read what I have left. We have sine, and it is right next to the hypotenuse. Right, they're next to each other. So I'm going to think, what do I need to do? Am I going to divide or times or whatever? We need to remember that if I have, for example, A, B, that means A times B. When two things in maths are right next to each other, they're times. So this is going to be times. So I'm going to have x equals, you've got to be really careful here now, sine, open and close brackets, you need those brackets, times the hypotenuse, which is 12. What do you think will go inside those brackets? Like, what haven't we used yet? The 40, right? The angle goes in the brackets when you're finding a side. So now I can type that in. So I have sine 40, you must have the open and close brackets, times 12, and that is 7.71 centimeters. Okay, I'm just going to quickly do another one underneath. It's not always going to be called X, by the way, but I'm just doing that. So let's say, okay, let's say I've got this triangle. That's a really good question, Amelia. The reason it is times, very good question, is because if I cover up the O, the S and the H are next to each other. It's not that one is on top of the other. So I'm actually going to illustrate that in the next one as well. Okay, that's a really good question. So for this one, the opposite is x and the adjacent is 18. So I want the opposite and I have the adjacent. So which formula would I use? It's going to be tan. So so I want the opposite, so I would cover that up. So if I'll just draw it a little bit clearer, okay? Because really, these are formula triangles. So if you did it in full, like, in science, you do speed, well, not anymore because you're A level now, but speed equals distance over time. Don't know if you do A level science, but yeah. GCSE science would have been like that. Yeah. Right. Now, the speed and the time, when they're next to each other, they're timesed. So with the tan formula, the T and the A, they're next to each other. There's really a times in between them. So because I want X, if I covered it up, so if I cover up the O, because that's what I want the opposite, so I cover it, I am then left with T next to A. And because they're right next to each other, they're timesed. Okay, it's like AB is A times B. U V is U times V, and so on. When two things are right next to each other on the same line, they're times. So to get the answer for X, it's going to be tan, open and close brackets, times the adjacent, which is 18. Now, what would go inside those brackets? The 20, right? The angle. That's how I would find X. And that is 6.55. Right. Does that does that make sense there? Hey, they're not easy questions by any means, but they're worth quite a few marks, so I think it's worth going over. So what I'm going to do, I'll give you a few to do, and you can do these on the board. It's up to you, but I think it makes sense to do it on the whiteboard. Let's make this a bit smaller. Right, let me get the questions. So, sides. These three look good. Okay. Okay, so these are from the sheet as well. Have a go at finding the three missing sides. Okay, so remember what you've got to do, you've got to label, choose the right formula, show what, and then, decide then whether you times or divide and plug it in. So let me know if you're stuck, but have a go at finding X for these three triangles. Okay, let me know once you've had a go at them. But obviously don't rush. Okay, really well done. Okay, so we'll go through the first one. Um, so for the um, have we have we got an answer for A? Okay, let's have a look at that. So C. So we have the opposite. We want the adjacent. So if I write down SOHCAHTOA, right, we have the opposite. We want the adjacent. That's tan. So I want a side. It's not going to be shift. So if I cover up what I want, that's the A. Now I can see it's the opposite over tan. That's going to be a divide. It's going to be 10 over tan brackets 35. We work that out. That's 14.3. Fantastic. Okay, the second one, um, this one I have, right, the x is the hypotenuse, and I have the opposite. So that's going to be sine. So I cover up h. That's going to be opposite divided by sine. So I would have 8 over sine bracket 40. That's 12.4. And the last one, right, I have the hypotenuse and I want the adjacent. That's going to be cosine. I want the adjacent this time. If I cover up that, I have cos next to the hypotenuse. So they're going to be times. So I would need to do cos 70 times 6, which is 2.05 approximately. How do we feel about that? Excellent. And not easy questions there. Now, we didn't get to tree diagrams this time, so we'll do tree diagrams next time, along with, I think we'll do expanding brackets and triangle improvement. And then what we've done, we've actually covered a lot of the topics that you're going to have. So I think it'll be handy to do a past paper then. So I'll just give you a past paper as well. But in the meantime, I'll give you some of the questions to do from the sheet that I dropped down. So what we'll do, we'll do some of the, I'll give you some, well, I think it was all this, wasn't it? Did I give you all three of these sheets? It might just have been the first 2 pages, so I'm not sure. Doesn't really matter, to be honest. But I know I gave you the first two, certainly. Right, so if it is all three, that's even better, actually. But what you can do as homework then, you can do D, E, and F. And yeah, so question two, D, E, and F, that'll be handy to do. And then if I did indeed give you this side as well with question three, it'd be handy doing all of questions three. So this is this goes A, B, C, D, E, F. Be handy doing those because you need to decide whether you use the -1 shift or not. So use a shift for the angles. It might be worth looking over this video again. So I'm going to put the recording of this up onto YouTube, like before. Again, only you can see it because only you have the link to it. But it'll be handy looking at it again when you have a go at those. And I'll send over all the solutions as well, so you can check. Okay. So I'll sort that out now, put all the solutions onto the WhatsApp. Again, you can just say in the WhatsApp if you're stuck on the homework, but have a go at those ready for next time, and we'll leave the tree diagrams until next week. Okay? Okay, my pleasure. I'll put the recording up as soon as possible. Have a really nice weekend as well, girls. Bye now.